What's your favorite of the vitamin manufacturers, the one that you recommend? Is there one out there that you'd say is a very good one?
Well, you know,
Standard Process, for instance.
Standard Process is excellent. I've been using them for many, many, many years. They've been in business for over 75 years. I would say that's the majority of the vitamins and MediHerbs are some of the herbs that I use. And we have to realize that, you know, to me, I'm not tied down to them by any means. They have good quality products. But on the other hand, if I find another product that works better, I'm not against using it.
Are there many companies that make high-grade vitamin products in America that are whole food vitamins? I mean, Source of Life, is that a whole food vitamin company? Or?
Well, you know, we have to look, in order for me to determine whether or not if something is a whole food vitamin or supplement versus a synthetic vitamin or something, I really need to look at the label and look at the chemical name, because by looking at the chemical name, I can tell whether it's synthetic or not. And we have to realize we also have to look at the source, where they're getting it from. Standard Process grows all their stuff on organic farms, and so we know that those vitamins are not going to be filled with a lot of toxins, and synthetic vitamins are a lot of times filled with allergens and things like that.
And now we're back to something that relates to quality control. You know, for the last 3 years, as we've been producing shows, most of them have been with MDs and DOs and talking about surgeries and particularly treatments of illness, and certainly wonderful programming, and I've enjoyed it. But so many of you, the viewers, have said, Dave, you know, when are you going to do something on alternative medicine? And one of the things that I know is a challenge for you is, how do we as consumers go about figuring out which vitamin really is good for us and which one isn't? Because you think you have it figured out and you buy the one and then somebody says, oh, no, 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 you did the wrong thing. I mean, where do you go for advice that's good advice when it comes to selecting quality vitamins? Or where do you go to learn about it? I mean, how do you become a knowledgeable consumer?
Well, it's very confusing for the consumer, because, you know, one day you might read in a paper that vitamin A cured this, the next day in the paper you read that vitamin A has no effect on that particular disease or condition. But, you know, we really have to go and do our homework on where are these products coming from. Okay, first of all, I recommend whole food complexes. If you have to take synthetic vitamins, then it's going to create certain deficiencies of nutrients, so you better be supplementing your diet, so to speak, or supplementing other vitamins with those nutrients so you don't become deficient. So we have to realize that it's very difficult for the consumer. Places they can go to educate them: number one, my website. We have much information on the website that they can read about vitamins, and of course, you know, coming to the lectures at the Center for Natural Medicine every Monday night, we educate people. So the most important thing is they can educate them, but they need to be educated on somebody who is really not trying to sell you a product, because sometimes they can get the story a little twisted.
I don't mean to be critical when I say this, but I've talked with people who run medical schools, and they say that in the past there wasn't really a lot of training for physicians on vitamins, and now there's a little bit more. There's even some courses where they explain some of alternative medicine enough to understand what it is in general. How do you deal with a situation when you go to your physician and you say, hey, what should I do with vitamins? And the doctor says, well, I don't really know. I mean, where do you go from there?
Well, you need to do research and find out what doctors have been educated on vitamins, and a lot of times it's going to be chiropractors, naturopathic doctors, homeopathic medical practitioners. It's going to be those types of people that have more education in that area. And you're right, before, after 1991, there was only medical schools, I think only 22 offered one course, and 100 schools, it was elective. Nutrition was an elective, and only 5% of their students took it. So we have to realize that a lot of times the medical profession don't know about vitamins. So if they don't know about it and they don't recognize it, then you need to find somebody who does. And we have complementary alternative medicine practitioners who actually are medical doctors who actually do both sides. They sort of have their feet on both sides of the fence.
What exactly would you want to share with people about vitamin C? And I know we have a slide we can take a look at. What's your message there?
Well, you know, this slide actually kind of depicts the difference between the whole food complex of vitamin C versus, you know, a synthetic form of vitamin C. And we have to realize that vitamin C complex basically consists of ascorbic acid. It's going to have bioflavonoids. It's going to have rutins in there. It's going to have tyrosinase, and it's also going to have vitamins P, K, and J. That's the whole architectural component of a vitamin C complex.
Now, it's a whole bunch of things all together.
All the things that are found in nature. Now what happens when we take out, we tease out the ascorbic acid portion, which is the outside of that vitamin, and basically they chemically mass produce that. And one thing I want to point out here is this, is that most people think that vitamin C in the form of ascorbic acid is the same thing as vitamin C. It's not. Because you know why? Because ascorbic acid does not cure scurvy, whereas vitamin C does. So that goes to show you that taking the vitamin C synthetic portion of ascorbic acid is not going to be as beneficial if you had a whole food complex. And the analogy I like to use with patients is this: if I told you to go home and I told you to take an egg and I told you just to eat the egg shell and throw the yolk and the whites away and you will get all the protein that you need from that egg, you would look at me like I'm crazy. But that's exactly what's happening with ascorbic acid and vitamin C, the synthetic form.
Let's take a look at the vitamin E graph, or actually it's the whole foods and versus processed foods graph. Let's take a look at that one.
Yeah, in this
now what are we looking at here?
Well, this particular graph is basically, it was designed by Ephraim Pfeiffer, and basically he's a biochemist, and what he does, this is a chromatogram, and basically what he did is he actually devised a technique where he could take things that were invisible and actually make them visible by the use of a filter paper and a reagent. And so he first started doing this in soils, because there would be some soils where the corn would go really high and other soils the corn would only be maybe half the height. And so they wanted to see what was in those soils. And so what he did is he kind of started doing it in foods and vitamins, so he can actually do like a quantitative value of the actual substance. So when we take a look at these, if you look at the first one there, you can see that vitamin C on the lower left side is the natural vitamin C, whereas if you look on the top part, that's ascorbic acid. And just by looking at that, you can see that the vitamin C on the bottom is much more nutrient dense. If you take a look at the next one, it's a popular orange drink versus orange juice, and you can see there's much more nutrients in that, and those nutrients are what is found in earth and nature, and these are like cofactors, mineral activators, enzymes, and all these are very, very important for your body, because you don't want to create other deficiencies. And the last one is when we look at commercial wheat bread versus homemade wheat. Whole wheat. And you can see that we didn't, in commercial bread, they rinse it out and they wash it with certain chemicals, and they end up killing all these nutrients off. And basically you can see in the whole wheat, you can actually see that all the components found in nature are actually there. So the key to this slide is basically this is where you can see you can get more nutrients in things in actually whole foods versus commercial foods.
Okay, let's take a look at B1, vitamin B1, which is slide 3D. Just for a couple seconds and see what that one's about.
Well, just basically on this slide, I wanted to get the point across to show people that, you know, most people tell you that these vitamins are natural, they're exactly the same. Well, they're not, and you can see by this slide, if you look at the top picture there, that is the molecule of natural B1. And what happens there is you can see that that is totally different than the B1 below it called thiamine mononitrate, or the one to the right called thiamine hydrochloride. And you can see there that these chemical structures are totally different. And it's this odd geometry that actually makes it very difficult for the body to actually absorb these vitamins. And as one doctor put it best, he said, you know, it's like trying to put a right-hand glove on a left hand. It's not going to fit very, very well. And we have to realize that most people don't know that synthetic vitamins spin the opposite way than natural vitamins do. And so we have to realize that a lot of these vitamins are mirror images of the whole food complexes. So the chemical structures are not the same, and the vitamins are not the same.
What is a crystalline vitamin?
Well, a crystalline form of vitamin is a vitamin that basically, again, it's been fractionated. They take a certain component out of the whole complex, and it's usually processed by heats or chemicals. And in that process, again, they break down the nutrients that are needed. And of course, without those nutrients, if you're on them long term, you may be able to create deficiencies in the body.
What does the word organic vitamin mean?
Well, the word organic out there, you know, it's kind of tricky, because really it all depends if you're talking in the sense of growing food or if you're talking in the sense of actual vitamins. I mean, they could say it's organic if they add a carbon molecule to it, and they could say it's organic, but most people look at that on a label and they say, oh, that's organically grown, it must be good for me. But that's not really what it's getting to. So that's just to really, you have to be cautious out there, and you have to do your homework on these vitamins, because it is a $15 to $20 billion industry a year, and literally thousands and billions of dollars are being wasted.
Well, you've brought up an interesting point. I saw a report once that said that about 37% of the profit in a health food store typically comes from the vitamin department.